Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're here with me. Did you know you're one with God for eternity? Welcome, welcome. I'm glad you're here with me. You're not a stranger anymore. Now you're family. You're not a stranger anymore, and now you're family. Welcome, family. Welcome to Unity of Monroe online on this Sunday, March 29th, as we move forward. And welcome to my home office here, one of the 4 bedrooms we have that was converted into an office that I've used over the years. And I do want to thank you for joining in and tuning in. In the meantime, as we move forward, just to trust and know that you are all healthy, at peace, and enjoying your time away, sequestered, shall we say, in home with family or by ourselves. And I trust that you're all healthy and at peace, and even enjoying some of the words of inspiration, ideas that have been we've been sending out, that I've been sending out, ideas of how we move through these days, these interesting and challenging days, and how others have shared as well, and we appreciate that, and please continue doing that as well. As I stated earlier, on these fine spring days, there's a few things that come to mind that invite us to discover, uh, as we process all of this, the beauty and wonder of life, the beauty of these beautiful and wonderful spring days, and the wonder of when the heck are we going to get through this thing and get it over with? Well, with that thought in mind, I send you those greetings of love and peace through your journey. And hopefully, you've been thinking about those pathways as we've been talking about for the past 3 weeks, choosing the path of life that we desire to go upon, the paths of life that we've already chosen. This is part 4 of our 4-part series, Spring Sunday series, called Pathways. And pathways is or are the recognitions of those roads that we've been on in our life, the road we're on right now, and those roads that have challenged us or have informed us, have made us who and what we are. Looking at the traveling on that road from a spiritual perspective, with the ongoing coronavirus crisis, it's kind of changed the way I looked at this whole series. I had a series of 4 things set up, dealing with everyday life, and it seems like now everyday life is about the coronavirus and how we deal with it. So we're going to still look at it today, but from a different vantage point, looking at it from our own overall feelings of the issue, and how we're dealing with the feelings and the issues of people around the world. This is a global, of course, event, a global experience. And the feelings of concern and grief that people are expressing, that they're going through, the feelings of that are coming up due to this pandemic, the fears and concerns we may have, and of course the the grief and the worry that people have over their loved ones, whether it's those who are hospitalized, those who have passed on, and of course the worry of many people who um, have lost their work, their jobs, are faced with debt, and the concern of everything that has transpired. Specifically, I want to look at the sense of loss we might feel and find in our world in this day and through this process. Throughout this crisis, I thought it was important to, as I said, look at this as a global perspective, that we're not in this alone. This is not just a Western thing or an Eastern thing. This is a global thing. It's not just something taking place right here in our community. The effects of this on the whole of the human psyche is profound when you think about it. Families being torn apart, people being hospitalized, individuals, thousands of people dying from this virus, and a heart that is really open and centered on feeling that sense of being torn apart, that sense of pain of the human experience right at this moment. is when we call, or we're able to call, our own compassion itself. It's not a matter of wallowing in that, but it's recognizing how that can be a healing moment for our community and for our world. So what we do with this is one of those pathways that we walk. Am I willing to, or wanting to, open up my heart to compassion, to reach out to others in whatever way I feel moved? Author Stephen Levine writes that when your fear touches someone's pain, it becomes pity. When your love touches someone's pain, it becomes compassion. So think about your love from your heart, from your mind, from your consciousness, touching someone else's pain, whether you know them or not. It's a global thing. We're all part of the same community. When our love touches people, which it does in myriad ways, and when it touches them, we don't know what kind of effect it's going to take place. But we do know within ourselves that we are doing what we're called to do. How it touches that person is going to be according to their consciousness and understanding. The spiritual practice of compassion is often linked to the flowering of the heart. If you think about your heart opening up like a flower blooming, that spiritual practice of compassion. And we first do this by allowing ourselves to feel that sense of grief and suffering in the world, opening our heart, including our own, that we're feeling. Now again, it's not just to wallow in it, but it's to feel it and then to do something with it, to demonstrate it, not to turn away from the pain, but to move toward it with a sense of caring and compassion, to go into those situations where people are hurting, and to identify with our neighbors and loved ones that are feeling that distress. Really, it could be as simple as just, listening to their overall concerns about what's happening with an empathetic ear. And then I think next what we do is we pay attention to our own feelings. What am I feeling through this? The more we understand our feelings, the more we're able to allow it to happen, to allow it to flow through us, and recognize how we walk in another person's shoes in that way. If we know what we've gone through, we can certainly empathize and understand what others have gone through as well. We can look at the bigger picture of life. We can move into what we might call expansion thought, or expansion of our consciousness. As I said earlier, this is a global epidemic. It has global impact. And it shows us really the fragility and the strength of our world, of our own individual being, outpictured through this crisis that we're going through. When you think about it, we are fragile and beings. This human body and mind has a sense of fragility to it. We all know that. And I think we're being called to take better care of ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Take better care of the people of this earth. It's not just, a thought, if you will, of taking care of just the people that are localized, but to take care of each person in our world, on our planet. I think it begins by being strong as well. That's part of the whole equation. It's not just recognizing the fragility, but it's to remain strong, and that the human spirit in us remains strong, and letting its light shine through that sense of compassion, through that sense of caring and service, and being an inspiration in whatever we can, in whatever way we can. I think of like an act of compassion and caring of nurses who are caring for their patients right now in the intensive care unit, who are going through this crisis, this virus. I know that the next time I catch myself complaining about high prices or high cost of medicine, I'm going to think about these people and what they have had to go through, and what they will still be going through in the coming days and weeks. And I'm so inspired and lifted up by their sense of service and duty, the call to do the compassionate work that they were called to do. Nurses, doctors, caregivers, all of those people who are out on the front line. Every day, a moment of prayer can just simply be, Namaste, God bless you, I salute you. Along with this pandemic, there's been a lot of pain and suffering in our world. And I think we go through this better by being in touch with our own pain and suffering, as I said earlier, but recognizing that it comes from wholeness within ourselves. And it means that wholeness, not to run away from that sense of being in touch with our pain, to not run away from it, not to be afraid of it, but to recognize that when I can understand it, I can be better in charge of it, to allow it to be a lesson for my experience, for life itself. As praying people who strive to raise consciousness one heart and mind at a time, it clearly means that we feel that sense of pain, but placing life-enhancing energy there in place of panic or worry. Jesus shared with us many stories of that, but one in particular of how he invited us to embrace or to love those enemies we have. And within us, of course, is the enemy of pain. To embrace pain and to turn into it for as long as we need to truly understand it, so that we may then let go of it. There's truly no way to let go of our pain until we can understand it, we can embrace it, we can love it. As Jesus said, to love those enemies is to love that pain within us, that having that deep, impactful understanding of it. And as we do so, we bring out that compassionate self within us. We understand our own pain. We see it in others, we feel it in others, and we have that empathy in and with others. Another point about understanding all of this, the whys of pain and recognizing it, is that it does strengthen us. And I know it has strengthened you and your loved ones and our world as well, along for the journey of life. It calls us to discipline our mind and our heart, perhaps like never ever before in any other situation. It shows us our own strength, that very same strength of spirit that Jesus went through in his life, and especially that time of crucifixion. Of course, in the next couple of weeks, we move closer to the Easter week experience. And while we may not have that opportunity to be gathered together in and on that Easter day, we can recall beforehand that Easter Holy Week, that Garden of Gethsemane story of Jesus there in the garden asking, as he did, or as it was recorded, Abba, Father. And of course that was Jesus' own intimate identification or name for God or of God in his heart. He said, Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want. I love when we look at these Easter experiences and stories. I love the symbolism of it. I love looking at the rich metaphysical flavor of it, because they often do, pardon me, leave us searching or really kind of scratching our head, kind of trying to understand and identify it, not through a literal lens, because when we only look at it through a literal lens, it boggles the mind, or at least it boggles my mind. I mean, there Jesus is in the garden, and everyone has gone to sleep, and yet somehow this story became recorded. Well, we understand that it wasn't a literal story, it was an author's interpretation of what happened during that particular time. I mean, who recorded the conversation? Also, strictly from a human perspective or perception, trying to understand the whole Easter resurrection experience, is challenging to comprehend. At least it is for me. Again, it goes against what we know scientifically and logically and in the realm of physics. and in dealing with how life is everlasting. But yes, life is everlasting, but it's transformational. It's transformational. In other words, life continues on, but not in the same energy flow or the same energy form. So, of course, there will be more on that as we get closer to Easter in the next couple of weeks, as I said earlier. But to better understand this particular story in the Garden of Gethsemane, that writer of Mark is trying to paint a picture, if you will, of how he wishes to share his idealized Jesus. He's got an image, and he wants to share this picture with us. So on the one hand, he portrays him as a son of God in his divine glory, in all his divine glory. In this story, we also see the human side of Jesus, do we not? Of course. He says, "Take this cup away from me." But we see the human side of Jesus fleshed out by the author of Mark. And of course that was a pun intended. Fleshed out. The human side was fleshed out. On his divine side, Jesus' expression as the Christ consciousness does what? It has that perfect faith and trust that he will live beyond physical death and demonstrate to his followers that death is simply an illusion. And on the human side, Jesus is of flesh and blood and mind and thoughts, and the ego mind can't quite grab a hold of that or process that, and so it asks not to go through this pain and humiliation that the human ego mind only sees. In this brief prayer, Jesus acknowledges both the faith of his spirit and the fear of his mortal mind, which is something we probably are going through right now. With all that's happening in our own homes and being by ourselves in these moments. In that very same breath, he makes that choice, though. He recognizes to trust the guidance of Spirit, which we are called on every single day. That's what we believe and trust in our unity way of thinking. You see, Jesus gave us that demonstration. He wasn't there to place himself up on a pedestal and say, "Hey, I'm the exception." He was the rule, and he was sharing that with us, and that's what we teach in Unity as the master teacher. A teacher teaches not to bring people or put himself up on a pedestal, but to raise people up to a higher level, to a higher understanding, a better understanding of how you and I, with strength and faith, can walk through the valleys of the shadows and still hold our head up high, no matter what. It's just awesome to see story after story of the strength of people who are doing what they need to do. You and others and people that we see around the world, inspiring us and moving us to an even greater expression of strength for this journey, the endurance and perseverance. You know, there's an often quoted passage, in the New Testament, one of my favorites, and it says, in my Father's house are many mansions. And usually that statement is interpreted in a context of life after life, and afterlife. But I want to give you perhaps a different perspective on it, recognizing it in relationship to the pathways that we choose. And it fits in nicely with what we've been talking about and what we've been exploring. I have a choice, the path to choose this day. So in my Father's, house are many mansions. The Greek word used in the Bible that comes out from that particular word in English is mansions. It's interpreted as mansions. But in the language of Jesus and many people of that time in the New Testament, in the Aramaic tradition, Bible scholars look at that, it's more commonly interpreted as dimensions. Dimensions. So a different interpretation then, looking at it, is consistent with the interpretation based upon what we know about quantum physics and proposed by author Greg Britton in his delightful book called The Isaiah Effect. And according to quantum physics, many outcomes exist for a particular moment in time, right now. There's many outcomes that are there, that already exist according to quantum physics. Britton writes in his book, and I want to share this with you. He says, like the Bible passage, "In my Father's house are many mansions," the house of our world is the home of many possible outcomes for the conditions that we create in our lives. The choices we make as individuals determines which mansion or quantum possibility we experience in our personal lives. So he goes on to say, for example, we can choose forgiveness or compassion or peace, and it already exists. It attracts that because it already exists in that reflection, the qualities of it. He goes on to write, quantum physics suggests that by redirecting our focus, we bring a new course of events into our experience, while at the same time releasing an existing course of events that no longer serves us. Could bringing peace into our lives be as simple as a concerted, unified effort to focus upon peace as if it were already here? Ancient traditions ask us why we would make it any more difficult. So what Braden is saying is that it already exists as a quantum idea or thought, if you will. And we can choose to think in those terms. Could our expansion then into God or Christ consciousness fully and completely be as simple as a concerted and unified effort to dwell upon that fact that already exists? It's there. I just have to embrace it. We just have to embrace it as a people, as a country, as a world. Quantum physics then suggests that we will move into that experience or that mansion. Now, this doesn't mean we don't recognize what we're going through, but we're setting up that vision and agenda we wish to see for the coming days and weeks and months. So to move into that mansion of thought, understanding that principle, the mansion, it's always filled with the power and the presence and the wholeness of God right in the midst of who and what we are, and every thought that we think and feeling that we feel, and compassionate heart that is open. That mansion of realization that we are one with each other. Yes, we're separate from each other these days, but I think we're finding a sense of more connectedness and oneness and wholeness. And so, dear friends, may you find that time to go apart a while, to rest easy and find that centeredness and peace, that moment of transformation that takes place through you and as you. And to know that throughout this crisis that you and I and all of us on this planet are going to be stronger for this. I truly believe that. We're going to be stronger through these next few weeks and months. And I encourage you to continue to do all of the things that you need to do to find that sense of centeredness and peace in your life. Know that I'll be in touch with you in the coming days, and I invite you to send any of your inspired words and thoughts about things that you are doing, life-affirming things, and ways that you are moving through and allowing transformative thoughts to change the way you approach this and look at this. So I leave you with that thought in mind, and I envision for you peace and wisdom and great love in these moments as your heart awakens to the compassionate being that you are. And as you take time to find that beauty and wonder of life itself, and to be open to that which is sacred, which is you, and which is all of the beings on this planet. God bless you. God bless you. I salute and see the divine in you. And thank you for being a part of our Sunday experience here at Unity of Monroe. Weave us together. Weave us together in unity and love. Weave us together. Weave us together, together in love.